Hello, my name is Yildiz. I'm based in Australia and I have been involved in family constellation work now as a practitioner, holding workshops and also doing training and personal sessions since around 2005. And I'd like to share with you some of the questions I get through my website frequently on a daily basis. I thought I would just put them into a video so that more of you can have a look at some of these questions and answers, particularly if you're thinking about constellations and wondering whether it might be the right move for you. So I have got 7 questions here. So just look at the video and see if this is the right process for you. The common questions are here. What is a constellation? A constellation is a way of looking at yourself as part of your family system. This is a very different way of looking at a problem that you might have, because most of the time when we look at our issues or problems, we often look at ourselves or go to counselling or coaching or any other process where we're looked at as a complete entity within our own right. A constellation looks at you as part of your family system and knows that we are also part of that generational consciousness and also unconsciousness. And it's the unconscious part of what we carry from our family system that will often be a source of inhibiting or blocking or patterns that we don't know where they come from, that we didn't have, relationship patterns, communication patterns, or addictions, blocks to success. All sorts of things can happen that we carry from our family system out of frequently love and loyalty. Now, often it won't feel like love, and it will often feel like an obligation or a burden that we carry with our family system. And while we continue to carry it, we often tend to carry on with the issue. It's very difficult to get rid of or to resolve an issue like this through regular psychotherapy or coaching or personal development, because they're not equipped to be able to go into that deeper generational unconscious mind to assist you to work it out. So a family constellation is an experiential process. It's brief. It's psychotherapeutic. It has the ability to go into different realms that we are not all normally able to access, where we gain information of feeling, thinking, or action. A constellation is normally a brief situation where we go away and allow it to settle through the different levels of our being until we come up with a new perspective in some way. So that is a constellation. How to do family constellations. Now that's a huge question. The short answer is you can't really do constellations unless you've had proper training. It's very easy to open up energy. It's very easy to play with energy, and it's very easy to think you know what you're doing, but it's also really easy to be quite damaging if you don't quite know what you're doing. So I strongly recommend anybody who wants to do a constellation needs to have proper training with a reputable family constellations practitioner training. So how to do constellation from a really basic level is this. Normally, we sit in a group of people in a physical family constellation workshop. And a person might sit next to the facilitator who wants to look at a particular issue. And the issue could be anything really at all that they feel is blocking their life or their identity in some way. And so we talk a little bit about the issue and talk about their intention of what they want and who might be involved in it. And then we pick from the group. And often the group is a group of people that have never come together before. They don't know each other. They often do not know the client. And so the client picks somebody to represent their mother or their father, themselves, possibly, perhaps their spouse or ex-spouse or ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, could be a child, could be a boss, could be anybody according to their issue. And so once the right people have been picked according to the particular issue or requirements for this constellation, for this client and their issue, then the representatives will just stand in that particular place where they've been placed, and then they will start to feel certain energies. And the energies might be heaviness or lightness, could be sadness or anger, could be a need to look away or turn away, or could be anything at all. And so the constellation then starts from that process, and the facilitator will facilitate the whole process from the beginning to the end, allowing people to speak or giving healing sentences, or movements might happen, or even the facilitator might encourage a movement into a particular direction. The client will usually be sitting outside in the circle, watching the whole thing from a different perspective to the way they normally see those people. So they're able to see themselves, their parents, all the people that are involved from a different view, and also observe their own representative and how they are in the midst of all of these different aspects. This, at the end of a constellation, things will have come back into a better order, and then the client will take that new order in, hopefully, and then it will settle as it needs to settle into their awareness. Now, how it's done can also be done in a private session. Now, a private session will be with a facilitator trained again and the client, and it could well be with dolls, it could be with symbols or stones. I use triangles a lot. Could be with floor mats. All these different ways of working can be used, in which you can still get the spatial connections of all the different components of your constellation set up. And then the facilitator will guide you through until you come to the point where it's more or less at completion, things have got into a better order, and then the constellation will finish. You can also do a constellation in the mind's eye, so visualizing the vital connections that you have with certain people, and the facilitator again will guide you through the whole thing until you come to the other end. So that's how you do constellations. Interestingly, this happens just as well online as it does in person. I was challenged in 2020 to consider this online, and I have been so pleasantly surprised and realized that I had had a limiting belief thinking it could only happen in person. It happens just as easily online, as energy has no separation, right? Energy is everywhere. And so Constellations can happen in many ways, but if you want to do constellations, please get good training from a reputable family constellations practitioner. How does family, okay. Does family constellations work? Wow, that's a difficult question. Does family constellations work? And it's a loaded question because it depends on your intention. What do you want to have happen in a constellation? Does family constellation work in making your mom or your dad or your partner or your boss work or behave more appropriately or the way you would like them towards you? Probably not, okay? It's not about controlling others or getting your way with other people. That's not what constellation is all about. What it does do is allows you to look at yourself in the particular situation, yourself as part of the particular situation, and also allows you to express yourself and perhaps give back anything you're carrying for a particular family member that is burdensome or inappropriate. Perhaps release yourself from any loyalties or entanglements with particular family members to free you up. And once you've done all of that, allowing you then to create a different perspective of yourself, the other people in your situation, and from that grow, right? This is what personal growth is all about. Not wanting to change others, but willing to do whatever we need to do to change ourselves or unburden ourselves or create good boundaries for ourselves or ways of speaking up that are appropriate for ourselves so that we can deal with the present situation way more comfortably. Now, when we do a constellation like that, sometimes it really is the case that because we have changed or we have shifted inwardly, energetically, emotionally, that things can shift around us. But don't depend on that. Don't depend on that. Rather, just accept yourself where you are, your new perspective, and just see how you operate from there. So in that respect, it works in personal growth, personal change, enabling you to work with the present situation so much more effectively and practically. So yes, that's how constellations work. Family constellations and parenting. This is a complex one. Family constellations and parenting. We all come through family systems, whether they stay together, whether you have single parent families or split families or together families. We all come through families. There's always an ovum and a sperm that gets together somehow. And so we all come through genetic lines and form our own genetic imprint from our two parents. And so parenting then is what happens when we're young with our own parents, but also is what comes through your father's parenting line and your mother's parenting line. It's pretty hard to avoid some of those patterns going through into your own parenting. And so if you are, for example, cut off or have a difficult connection with one or both of your parents, then it's very difficult for you as a person to feel complete. And so it's very easy in that situation for your unconscious mind to look to one of your children to either complete that difficult relationship you have with your parent, or to follow, to carry on a pattern that's already carried on in your family system. So it's very helpful for those of us who are parents to look at our own family system as much as possible to clear up, or to come to at least a level of acceptance with each of those parents. Now, that is even in terrible family situations. I'm not asking any person to come from a place of total disconnection or hate towards a parent to suddenly say, yes, they love them passionately, whatever, because saying it doesn't do anything anyway. It has to be felt, okay? Rather, it's better to sort out that entanglement with that parent from within the client's self, right? It's not something that is often done well face to face. And that's why, even though I'm a master of counselling, I don't do that anymore very much, because it's much more useful for each person to sort out their own feelings in a constellation session, give back to that parent whatever they need to give, create some healthy boundaries, and then over time, perhaps a level of acceptance can come in. And once that comes in, then the love can start to flow from one generation to the next and down to your children too. So parenting and constellations is a really important area, one that is incredibly useful, and I would like to see being used in many, many more situations, and can very much help us to become better parents and better children and better grandparents. So yes, family constellation in parents is a very good thing. Normally, as parents, we look at the parents rather than a child or children that are, what could you say, you know, out of order or acting out in some way. It's more useful normally to look at the parents and look at where the rifts are with the parents, either with each other or with each of their family systems, to see what it is that is affecting the child. Okay, now if a parent finds that there's something about their own system that needs to be healed or sorted out, then it's up to them to decide to do that or not. And so it then becomes a choice for the parent. And it's not about the other person having to do anything. It's about the person who's got the rift to sort it out for themselves, okay? The other parent, if they choose, can sort it out for themselves. And then we've got a really happy situation of two people that can come together. Sometimes, though, we can sort things out for ourselves and the other person never does. However, from our perspective, if there's no resentment and no pain anymore, that is clear for them, even if it's not clear for the other member or members of the family. So this is a hard situation to talk about, really. It's a hard situation to explain, but it can bring a lot of peace for the parent, even if they have unresolved issues with their own parent that the other parent never wants to look at. If you can come to some resolution within yourself, that will have a big impact then on your own children and possibly grandchildren as well. And most of all, peace of mind. You know, there's nothing more precious than that. Family constellations and genetics. Family constellation and genetics, yes, I'm sure there is a relationship. Family constellations and epigenetics, definitely. It is true that patterns, emotional states, mind states, traumas can be passed through family systems. You can often jump a generation or just go directly through all the men or all the girls, or jump around, perhaps not be dependent on gender. Yes, you know, I have never been able to predict exactly where a pattern might come from. I can often guess, but I often don't know, not until I set it up with a client and step back and see what comes up. So yes, genetics, epigenetics, and family constellation go pretty much hand in hand. However, unfortunately, it's not an analytical process. Just because you had a dad or a mom or a grandparent with blah, it doesn't necessarily mean you will have it. It could be one of your children might have it, or your grandchildren. You don't know until you see it coming up, right? And so a constellation is a way of opening up that situation and just seeing where those loyalties are, which appear to be attached to the genes or the emotional connections that people have unconsciously to each other within that family system. That's what family constellation is incredibly good at. If you have a situation in a family system whereby an unresolved trauma, and by trauma I mean grief or loss, injustice, exclusion, anger, rage, could be many, many things, colonization, you know, war, genocide. I mean, there's so many things we can talk about here, including bankruptcy, of course. Anything like that can be unresolved in the family system in our generation or generations before. And so if it's still unresolved, it's probably a little ball of trauma or tension within that family system, which other members of the system will probably feel and create a loyalty to, an unconscious loyalty to, which means they're going to be unconsciously carrying that same energy, right? Now, you can't find that out in a genetic imprint scientifically, but you certainly can trace it in a family constellation. I have found this over and over again. So yes, there is a connection between family constellations and genetics, and definitely epigenetics. Family constellations and Christianity. Well, Bert Hellinger was a Catholic priest for a lot of his earlier life, I think certainly into his 50s or later. So yes, he was a Christian, he was a Catholic priest. However, as he developed into the world of therapy, and in particular into family constellations and his work with the spirit mind, which he developed later, he spoke of himself as no longer a Catholic, but he did speak to him about himself as very much involved and in tune with spirituality. And that's how he came across anyway to me, who was, you know, I was in his presence as a student and in his trainings a few times. So Christianity and constellations. I guess family constellations does not have a spiritual doctrine or a cultural doctrine. And that's what I personally love about it. It goes beyond any religion and any culture. It sees human beings as one. We all have the same need for connection and love and food and shelter and approval, all those good things. So from a Hellinger perspective and a constellation perspective, people are one and we all have similar needs and desires. And so family constellation and Christianity go well together. However, we would never in a constellation try to influence anybody into or out of any particular cultural or religious belief that they have. We would look at the constellation within that belief or within that culture and see what the constellation shows us needs to happen and what the client needs to happen. And so it's a perfectly safe process to use with a constellation. If you're looking at Christianity and if you're a Christian and you want to look at a particular issue, there is no reason why you shouldn't. This also applies very much to any other culture or religion such as Islam or Hinduism or the Jewish faith or any faith at all or no faith. So it kind of works for all because it's working on a human level, not on a religious level. I hope that answers that question. Family constellations and money. Family constellations and money. Now, many people find this one hard to understand. How can your family system have an impact on money or your ability for success? And it's not always about money, it's about achieving your dreams or fulfilling your potential or whatever that is for you. Family constellations can be very, very helpful in this regard because the ability to achieve comes out of a sense of worthiness. Do you feel self-worthy? And that very much comes in a large portion from your family system. So if you feel, for whatever reason, that you were unseen, unheard, put down, excluded, whatever in your family system, or if you have an unconscious alliance or connection with previous generations that suffered a lot of struggle or misfortune or some other such thing, then you will be carrying a lot of burdens and guilt and shame or feelings of rage or injustice or something which will impede your ability to fulfill your potential or to have a really strong sense of worthiness. And so a family constellation with a view to looking at potential or money can be incredibly important because it's very difficult often to achieve your full potential if you have a feeling of unworthiness and if that comes from your family system in terms of disconnection or misunderstanding or hurt in some way. So it's a really good idea to look at that in a constellation for the client to be able to self-heal whatever that situation is. So, in other words, family constellation and money is a perfect thing for people involved in personal development or wealth creation, or if you're a coach and you want to use it with your clients. So I do hope this video has been of some assistance to you. Yildiz, Family Constellations in Australia.